Now, while some verses tell us no, others seem to imply, at least to me, that it is alright to sometimes hide truths from some believers. In Hebrews, a dark horse that no one thought would have made the canon but somehow did, a book whose authorship is unknown to this day, we find a curious passage in chapter 5, verses 12, 13, and 14. For though by this time you ought to be teachers, you have need again for someone to teach you the elementary principles of the oracles of God, and you have come to need milk and not solid food. For everyone who partakes only of milk is not accustomed to the word of righteousness, for he is an infant. But solid food is for the mature, who because of practice have their senses trained to discern good and evil. Now, most traditional interpreters see this passage as acquiring biblical knowledge and an encouragement towards young believers to learn doctrines and understand dogma. And while this is true, the passage reveals two additional things. First, that there are different levels of Christian knowledge, as seen in the milk-meat comparison. Second, that those holding the most knowledge have been indoctrinated so as to be able to judge what is good and evil. Therefore, the ones possessing all of the knowledge have the tools to judge. Another additional clue regards Jesus' parables. In some of them, Jesus would not explain them to the public, but only to the apostles, who would ask him why he didn't explain them to everyone, only for Jesus to respond that it was for the masses' own damnation to hear but not understand. A third clue ties into the Apocalypse of Peter, a extra-canonical source that I previously made a video about, who was nevertheless accepted within the first century Orthodox Christian community. And the passage is about the message regarding universal salvation, which was supposed to be hidden from people in order to minimize sin in the world and basically keep people restrained from their impulses so as to not offend God more. Now, all of these clues reveal that there was a distinction regarding knowledge between believers, that this distinction empowered the ones with knowledge to make judgments others could not make, and that these teachers could keep secrets and sometimes were required to keep secret things which would allow others to gain access to knowledge they themselves had. It was required to prevent others from gaining knowledge to the things they themselves had. Now all of this, of course, was done in order to please God. Now, this video is about using the words found in this letter as a starting point to look at the clues, the biblical clues, and examine whether Christianity itself contained an inner sanctum of elites who were privy to information that the majority of followers had no idea about. Now, supposing that early Christian leaders were exposed to information not made available to followers, we can ask whether this is still the case today. Now, some of the oldest manuscripts in writing shedding light on church issues are in the Vatican Secret Archive, which is kept under lock and key, away from the prying eyes of the faithful who worship in St. Peter's Square and listen to the admonitions of the Vicar of Rome, who says that Jesus came to bring light and truth into the world. Now, these works are privy only to the highest authorities of the Holy See, while the oldest surviving manuscripts are from the 8th century onwards. Given that older manuscripts have been destroyed, either intentionally or not, is an open question. The question of transparency still looms large. Why? What is there to hide? Arguments from silence are usually impotent because they seek to establish claims through the absence of evidence. But when there is significant circumstantial evidence from disparate sources, legitimate questions may be raised. In the Gospel, Jesus said that the truth shall set us free. I'm tired of platitudes and I want to know the truth. If the Pope really is one of God's representatives, he has a mandate to tell us everything he knows, period. Now, Protestants were not included because they were more open to telling the truth, but mainly because they weren't part of the higher echelons of hierarchy, and they also didn't have the continuity of the Bishop of Rome had, and didn't have access to such first, second, third century information that the Catholic Church had. Protestantism grew out of the lower rungs of Catholic hierarchy, not from the upper echelons of archbishops, cardinals, or popes. Even so, the Christianity of today brings its own challenges. There is still hidden knowledge abounding in today's world. It is no longer about certain revelations, but rather it is about the truth regarding potentially artificial doctrines arising out of the gospel. For example, Bart Ehrman's book drew many responses from the conservative Christian community, and they all basically stated to the faithful that, calm down, we know about what he's talking. We knew about all these discrepancies all along, but we chose not to tell you because you didn't need to know them, because you wouldn't have been, quote, edified by them. Meaning that they would have distracted you from behaving and believing how we want you to behave and believe. But, don't trust these people that tell you these things, which are true. Trust us who have kept you from knowing them, because we're the ones who have the keys to the kingdom. We offer certainty and salvation. The Ehrmans of the world only offer confusion. Now, in my opinion, sometimes confusion and doubt are virtues. Misplaced, unwarranted certainty is not. And knowing the difference between passages which are certainties and the ones which aren't lets us decide for ourselves what is required and what isn't required of us. But the problem with this is that the church will no longer have that power to interpret in their own hands, but will have to pass it to us. And all this brings up one question. If people aren't willing to be upfront with a matter mandated by God, can they really be trusted?